Hi, and welcome to another video in our series of Advanced Web Development. I am your professor, Dr. Lisa English Dowdell. So in this lecture, we're going to take a big step forward in building dynamic web applications. So by the end of this video lecture, you'll be able to retrieve event data from a MySQL database using PDO, display that data dynamically on a dashboard, and then use layout techniques to create a clean and professional interface. So let's dive in. So in building our dashboard, I want to just do a little review of some of the components that we're going to be using. So in PHP, we can connect to a MySQL database using different methods. Now, one of the best ways that we've talked about, and probably most efficient way or flexible way, I should say, is using PDO, which is PHP data objects. Now, PDO or PHP data objects, it's a built-in PHP extension that allows us to connect to and interact with our databases securely and efficiently. Now, why do we use PDO instead of anything else? Well, one is security. It supports prepared statements. And these prepared statements, if you recall from the earlier videos, they help prevent SQL injections. Then there's also flexibility, because PDO works with multiple database types. Not only does it work with MySQL, but it works with SQLite and others. And then it's better for error handling because it provides exceptions for debugging. So today we're going to be using PDO to retrieve the data and then display it on our dashboard. So in our demo today, when we build our dashboard for our event app, we're going to be using an associative array. Okay, so just a little recap or review of that. So an associative array in PHP, it's a collection of key value pairs. So basically, instead of using a numeric index, like we're doing here in our regular array, associative arrays use named keys. So here's an example of that, of an associative array. So we've got like I said, we are using these key value pairs. So name would output John, email would output John's email address. So here, we're using this name keys, and this is going to output as far as the address. So how does this apply to database queries? Well, when we fetch database results using this fetch all here, it's going to return an array of associative arrays, where each of the column names are going to be the keys. So here the column name and then, the result. So this is the output of us calling as far as the events. So each row from the database is stored as an associative array with the column names, again, as being the key. So each of these column names is the key, and then this is the value. Now, when retrieving the data, you can either do a fetch or a fetch all. So a fetch all, what that's going to do is that's going to fetch all the rows from the results set at once. Okay, just like we saw in the previous slide. It returns an array of associative arrays. And this is best when we need, say, all the data at once. As opposed to just a regular fetch, a fetch, this is going to fetch one row at a time, from the result set. So this is best for cases where maybe we need to process one row at a time, like we need to pull the first row and then do something with that row, and then pull the second row and do something with that row and continue on. That's when we would use as far as the regular fetch. here. But if we want to just pull everything and say display it, and not really manipulate it as we pull it, then we would do the fetch all. Okay, so now that we've reviewed some of the methods that we're going to be using to work with our dashboard today, let's go ahead and start building it out. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our Infinity Free um, account so that we can go to our web hosting so that we can start creating our dashboard. And we're going to do a simple version, but you can always enhance this version with CSS styling and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my account. Okay, and I've already collected the information concerning my SQL database, but if you didn't record everything for yourself, make sure that you have as far as what the host name is, your username, your password. And then as far as the table, we're going to be pulling from, our events table that we've worked with prior to this video in the other modules, and we're going to be working with like the different columns. So if you need to go into that MySQL database, take a look at your the names that you created for your columns, then go ahead and do that, so that you can have that, because you're going to be, what we're doing is we're actually now going to be pulling information from our database and publishing it on our page. So I'm going to go here to File Manager, and then I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this one dashboard.php. Okay, now the first thing we need to do is to connect to our database using PDO. So, we've got our database name. Like I said, we've carried all that information over. We're just going to be using the same type of connection strings, using the different variables like we did before. So let me go ahead and copy those over. Okay, so as before, don't forget, we're using PHP, so we have to open and close so that we're going to be placing our code, within this PHP block here. So as the previous lesson, I've got my DSN that's set up with my host information, with my database name, again with that optional character set if you want. I've got my username, I've got my password, and I've got the different options that I'm using here. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually do a try catch, because what I want to do is connect to my database, and if it connects, then I want to echo out a message, and if it doesn't, then I want to echo out that there was a problem in making the connection. So again, we're going to do a try catch. Okay, and so again, we've set our database connection. So we're going to do that first using the variables and things like that that we have here. So I'm going to set a variable. Okay, so here with this, I'm creating my my new connection. Okay, this is my new database connection that I'm creating. And if it connects the way that it should, then I'm going to echo out connection was successful. Okay. All right. And then if it doesn't connect, oh, I'm sorry, I put this in the wrong spot. Okay, let me copy it. That should be in the try area. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Hopefully you didn't make the mistake I did, but if you did, remember this is the try. This is what you want it to try. You want the script to try to make this connection, and then if it's able to make the connection, then you want to echo out that the connection was successful. But if it's not able to make the connection, which is the catch, this is in the sense of the failure. And what I'm doing is basically if there's an error, it's going to show the error message. Okay, remember there's different types of exceptions that you can catch. This is one exception, which is going to be, an error in the PDO. So I'm going to say I want to do a message, and we're just going to use the same similar to what we did before. All right, so I'm going to do an auto save because I wanted to auto save as far as that. Okay, so now what I want to do is I just want to test this page. So I'm going to go back here so I can get my address of my web site. I'm going to go in here, and this is the dashboard.php page. And so see, the connection was successful. Okay, so that's just a test just to make sure that my page was successful. Okay, so now that we've connected to our database, what we want to do is we want to fetch the data from the events table. Okay, so we're going to be using like a select query in order to fetch like the event name, the date, the location from that event table. And this is where, like I said, we want to make sure that we have all of our column names. So basically our table, we'll just go here and look at it. Okay, so I'm going to go into PHP admin. These are my tables, and this is the table that I'm working with. So basically my table, the primary key is ID, and then I have a name, a date, and location, and of course the name of the table is events. So I want to just make note of that because that's what I'm going to be using to be able to retrieve the data. So let's go ahead and write the PHP query in order to retrieve our data. So we're going to go back over here. So of course this is going to be in the successful, and we don't need to now echo that out. So if it's successful, then what we want to do is we want it to go ahead and retrieve that data. Okay, so we're going to first start by taking our select statement that's going to be retrieving the data, and we're going to store that in a variable. So we'll say query, that's the variable we're storing it in. And this is going to be select. We want the ID, we want name, we want date, we want location. Now we could use an asterisk because we are pulling all of the fields, but if you want to only pull like specific fields, then this is how you would list out each one of the fields within your select statement. And then we're saying we're pulling this from events. I believe that's the name of the table. Let's go back and just make sure. Okay, events. Okay, so we could use this select statement here to select everything rather than, having each, calling each column separately within the select statement. Either one would work. Okay, so now we're creating that select statement. So now what we're going to do is we're going to prepare the SQL statement. Okay, and so we create another variable called statement, and we say equals PDO, or my PDO, sorry, should be my PDO. Okay, because we're taking this connection. Okay, so that's the reason why we have to make sure that that's exactly the same. And then we're saying prepare and then our query or whatever this variable is that you name. So basically, like again, we're preparing the SQL statement, okay? So, or the SQL query. So next thing we want to do is we want to run the query. Okay, and we do that using an execute. We execute this prepared statement that we created, which is now stored into this variable. Okay, and we say execute, and I spelled that wrong. Okay. All right, and then the last thing we want to do now is we want to fetch all of the results as an associative array. Now remember, I just talked about, if you wanted to just do one thing at a time, fetch each record at a time, because maybe you wanted to do something with each record. But right now, what we want to do is we want to just fetch them all, and then we want to store them in an array. And so the array that we're going to store them in is called events, and so we're just going to create a variable for that. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that. Okay, now the way we're going to iterate through or loop through rather the different events is we're going to be using a for each. So if you wanted to kind of, the next thing we want to do is we're going to format as far as our dashboard. But if you want to just kind of test to see, exactly how this is going to work, we could actually just have it echo out like each maybe event name or something just to test it. So we're going to be using a for each, when we actually display this information. So let's go ahead and do that here. And again, this is a way that we would like dynamically say go through or loop through an associative array, so that we could see the different values and of our array. So I'm going to say for each, and then what we do is we say like whatever the array is, and then we say that each item in the array, we're going to call that an event, so more singular, okay? And so all we want to do at this point is just we want to just echo out as far as the event. Oh, I don't know why I put I don't need that. Okay, I'm just going to do something just quick. I'm not going to try to format it or anything like that. And what I want to do is again, remember we talked about that it's one of those key pairs, so the way, if you look back at the other slide, the way that we display this is we'll have like what the array, whatever the pair is, the key is. Okay, so that's going to be, we're going to just say we want name. We're just going to show name. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that. And then if we refresh, if we go to our site and refresh, actually I did it already just to test mine, but we've got our list of our names. Now, of course, it's not formatted because we didn't do any kind of special formatting or anything or put any spaces, but it's just a way that you can see how we're going to be going in once we fetch this and we store it inside this array, how we're actually, based on the preview that we, or the review that we just did a few slides ago, how we're actually going to be displaying this out. So remember our column names, this is going to be our key. So again, what this returns is that array of associative arrays, where each column names, are going to be the keys. Okay, so now let's go in and we're going to actually create, now that we've retrieved the data and we figured out how we're going to retrieve it and how we're going to kind of display it. So let's go ahead and create like a structured table inside of an HTML page to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and put the preliminary HTML structure of a web page, so you don't have to watch me actually type that, and then we'll go in and actually pull our code and then make maybe some CSS adjustments to it. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've created my base structure. Now, as a web developer, or web application developer, or web designer, you could probably have this somewhere where you just kind of copy and paste it so that you're not having to always, retype it. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to store this information into a table. I want to have a table with all of my event information. So first I'm going to start off by just having a header here. Okay, and then I'm just going to create a table. Okay, and my table is going to have 3 columns, one for event, one for date, one for location. So I'm gonna use the first row as my table header. So I'm gonna say event name. Remember, we do for table headers, we do th. Okay, date. Oops. And location. Okay. All right, now I can go ahead, it's saved, so I can go ahead, and I took out that little test that I did before as far as displaying that for each. So I took that out. So I'm going to refresh this. Okay, and so I've got my table. Now it's not structured. So maybe what I can do is go in and do a little structure to it, but I'm going to pull my data first and then I'll do the structure. Okay. So again, if you notice, just make sure your PHP code that's pulling and fetching your data appears before, because remember pages, web pages read top down, so I want to make that connection. I want to pull all of that information first before I actually start creating my table to have this. So and then I'll be able to display it. So I've got to pull the information first, and then I'll have my HTML that will actually be used to display it. So I'm going to first start off by creating my row, my essential row that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to be having in the example we showed earlier, we had the for each. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this row repeat, for each of the arrays. Okay. So let's go in, and we can do this several ways. We could actually write the HTML code within the PHP, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just kind of simplify it and just, have it outside of my PHP code. Okay, let's see. Hopefully that works. If not, we'll have to do it the other way. Okay, so it's going to be 3 columns. Okay, that I'm going to repeat. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now you're not going to be able to see anything if I refresh right now. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use that for each to be able to pull the information. Okay, so what we're going to do now is let's go ahead and create our for each. Now remember, the for each is going to be used to iterate over the different arrays. It's going to, work with the array because it's going to automatically assign each element to a variable during the iteration. Okay, and So let's go ahead up above where we're gonna, this is the code that we want to iterate or loop through and place our event information. Okay, so let's start by, because we want to create the PHP, it's going to be PHP code. We're calling the for each, okay? So, and then it's going to end. We'll just go ahead and do the end. I always like to try to best practice to go ahead and do my beginning of my end, just so that I don't forget it. Okay, so again, we're going to, just like we did before, we're going to do for each, okay? And then events is our associative array that contains like those multiple rows of event data that we're retrieving from the database. And then we're going to create, just like we did before, a temporary variable that's going to hold each of the individual events, as we iterate through them, okay? And then we put a colon here. This is an alternative syntax for writing loops in PHP, say when we're embedding it, embedding HTML instead of using the open and the close curly bracket, because of the fact that we're not really kind of placing, this is an alternate that we can use. And then, at the end, again, this is all what we're going to be iterating through and creating for each event. And maybe it might be, remember I told you always kind of indent. So I'm going to do a little indent just so that some of that's kind of clear. And then at the end of this, I need to say, at the end. So, before, remember I was using, when I placed it up here, I was using the curly brackets. Since I'm not using curly brackets, I have to say end for each. Okay, and that ends that end for each looping there. Okay, so now within each of the cells, I want to have the each one of, like I said, as far as the values that I'm printing out, just like I did before, but I'm going to do this for not just name, but I'm going to have name, date, and location each one of these. And I'm going to use that HTML special characters. If you're not familiar with that, take a look at the previous video when it came to that. But again, this is how I'm going to type this. So I'm going to say equals HTML special characters. So this is going to be event, and the same as we did before, the name of the column. Now you might be asking, like, why did we do it like this, since the question mark equal instead of like the PHP that we had before. This basically is a short echo tag. It's equivalent to saying PHP echo, HTML special characters. And we use it this way because in this HTML table, we only really need output data. We don't need to actually execute any kind of logic. And so basically, this short echo tag just makes the code a lot cleaner and more readable. So we used the question mark PHP, that's more, we used that because we were using like a control structure, like a loop, if else statements, things like that for each. But when we're just outputting data, this, we can do something like this. This is equivalent to, again, just saying like PHP echo. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this for each of these. So I'm just going to copy this over, and all I'm going to do is change the column name. So instead of name, this one's going to be date. Okay, because remember, based on, up here in our query statement. Okay, this one is going to be location. Okay, and then again, I'm ending my for each there. So let me go ahead and save that. Okay, and then if you refresh, now you see that it reflects as far as what was actually in the database. And so we're printing out. This code dynamically generates like each table row, for each of the events. So even though we only listed this row once, okay, but what we're doing is we're looping through that array, that events array, we're looping through it. And for each array item, for each of these, we're actually printing out the name, the date, and the location in a table cell. Okay, so now let's go in and let's kind of clean up because uh, this is all like bunched up here. So let's add some styling to it. Okay, so we're going to come up here um, in the header or the head, and let's add um, some CSS. Okay, so first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a different font family. And again, this is you decide how you want to style yours. This is how I'm going to style mine. I'm also going to add a larger margin around the table. Okay. All right, and next I'm going to style the table itself. So I'm going to have the table, whoops, the table be 100% in width. Um, Add some margin. So again, how you want your table to look, that's what you'll include as far as your different styling. And then what I want to do is I'm going to style the different cells. So the table headers and the individual data cells. So I'm going to add a border around these. Little gray border. I'm going to add a little padding too because it seems like everything was all kind of jumbled up there. And I'm just going to make sure that everything is kind of text aligned left. Okay. And for my table header, I think I want to add a background color just to make them stand out some. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say, well, it saved that. Go here, refresh. Okay, and so now it looks a lot better. Okay, so basically what we've learned today is we've connected to our MySQL database using the PDO like we've done before. We've queried the database table, for the event information, okay, using our select statement here, and then we displayed the data dynamically on our dashboard, within HTML. Okay, so like I said, you can go in and play with that styling and things like that, but we've created our dashboard. So this can apply to any of your tables that you're working with your events database, your user, your registration, whatever the case is. Okay, so anyway, that's it for this lecture. Other than that, happy coding.